Hello again, everyone. My name is James Shotwell, and this is Music Biz. It's so good to be with you again. I spent the last week in Nashville, Tennessee, speaking at the Music Biz conference, and today I'm going to give you that same presentation for free. So today, I want to talk to you about building on borrowed lands. And to tell you the basic definition, borrowed lands refers to anywhere online where you share content, but you do not own the platform where you're sharing it. A great example would be this one, YouTube, or Spotify, or Facebook, or Instagram, or Twitter, or Snapchat, or TikTok, or pretty much anywhere you spend most of your time online. Now, to be clear, right off the top, there is nothing wrong with borrowed lands. You absolutely need to be on them. But we also have to strike a balance, or at least seek to strike a balance, between what we share on borrowed lands and what we share in owned lands, or lands that we can control. So I want to give you a breakdown on why you need to do this, what's been changing in the world of marketing, and why the future is all about ownership. Now, there are two problems that we're going to address in this video that are all about why owned lands matter. And the first one has to do with organic reach, because let's be honest, we've hit a breaking point. After more than a decade of social media and using it to help reach our fans are no longer seeing our content. Reach is down, engagement is down, and that means the amount of people seeing your content is down. Well, the first thing that we have to do is that we have to talk about the reality. We have to look at the data. And the data shows us that organic reach is indeed on the decline. In March of 2022, for example, organic reach on Facebook sat at just 2.5%. That means for every 100 likes to your page, 2.5 people saw that content, which is extremely low. And if you consider that the average conversion rate for most content is less than 10%, the likelihood that any of those 2.5 people actually did something with your post is incredibly low. And if we look over at Instagram, the rate in March of 2022 was 7.86%, which is, 5% better than what Facebook is offering, but still incredibly low. And it isn't always this way. Sometimes it's better and sometimes it's worse. As you can see by the card I'm throwing on the screen right now, on the left side, you'll see the average organic reach on Facebook month over month for the last year. And you'll see that in September, they hit a high point at about 10.4%. But otherwise, it's usually about 5 or less. And on Instagram, things tend to see a little better. They're still sitting above 5% almost every single month. And in April, it almost reached 12%. But let's think about that for a second. Out of every 100 fans, 12 of them see your content. And if we assume a conversion rate of at least 10%, if not lower than that, that means maybe 1, possibly 2 out of those 12 people are going to actually do something with that content. And again, those aren't good numbers. Now, I know someone out there is watching this and they're thinking that the people that struggle with organic reach are just not making quality content, or they're not making the right type of content, because after all, it's a game. We're playing with algorithms to figure out what exactly it is they want us to give people so that they will show them our content. And something that we pretty much all know for sure is that just posting text-based content doesn't really work. I mean, everybody loves a photo, everyone loves a video, everyone loves a GIF, and a lot of these corporations are making their algorithms, play nice with people that use media. So first things first, you got to use that. But using that alone isn't enough. I mean, do you post one picture? Do you post 2? Do you post a gallery? Do you post a video that's 5 minutes in length? Do you post a vertical video? Do you post a horizontal video? And what about all the other features? For example, Instagram has been pretty much pushing down the reach of anyone not using Instagram Reels, which is their TikTok knockoff. And on Facebook, the same thing is true for their version of Instagram Reels. And then over on TikTok, their reach changes based on what sounds you are using. And the real zoom out 100 miles picture here is that you can play the game of organic reach. And yes, every time there's a new tool that comes out, you can use it for a good likelihood of getting an early boost on your reach. But the thing is, you're never going to crack it. It's an impossible equation. And with every passing day, every new user, every new piece of content, every little change that happens on these platforms, the algorithms adjust. So what worked for you today won't work tomorrow, and what works in 2 weeks probably won't work right now. And that's just the nature of things. So we have to find another solution. Which brings us to problem number 2. Paid reach is never enough. Between what's been going on with personal security changes and of course what happened during the pandemic, even veteran marketers are having a hard time reaching their target audience, which means that we're spending more money and getting worse results, and that's just not something that we can sustain. Now, the reasons for this are multi-pronged, but there are 2 big factors that have been hurting paid reach, things that 5 years ago nobody saw coming. And the first of those is this little thing called COVID-19. Now, I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. It's a global pandemic, killed over 1 million people. And what happened when the pandemic first broke out is that the world went on lockdown. And when that happened, everybody went indoors and got on their devices, their phones, their laptops, their iPads, whatever it happens to be. And that means that everybody working in marketing and everybody working in advertising and everybody in promotions and publicity pivoted, and all of a sudden all the money that they had spent on billboards and magazines and all that other stuff suddenly went to digital. Digital first advertising was the play for every single person, and that hasn't changed. So the increased competition online is tenfold to what it was just before the pandemic. And to make matters worse, targeting is off. Now, I don't know how much you follow security measures. That's not the hottest topic in the world. But back in November, Apple issued a security update that allows consumers to choose whether or not apps can track their activities across these devices. Now, for anyone unfamiliar, tracking your behavior on apps is essentially the backbone of advertising on the internet. All the sites that use the kind of targeted advertising that you're familiar with, they all are basically relying on the same highway of user data. And since these Apple changes have been implemented, people can choose to leave that highway. So all of a sudden, there are less people contributing to the overall data understanding of these platforms. And what's happening, especially for the young target demographic, those 24 to 35-year-old people, the people that have money to spend, they don't have families, they love entertainment, they love to go out and do stuff, they're the ones most likely to turn on these privacy rules, which means it's harder and harder to target them because these apps are no longer tracking them in all of their activities. So you have to spend more money to reach the same audience, all while competition is also drastically increasing. And so much so that it's estimated people will spend over $58 billion advertising on Facebook alone this year. And while I couldn't find similar numbers for Instagram, I do know that Instagram estimates over $15 billion will be spent on story advertisements alone. That's just advertising in stories, $15 billion. And if you're an artist sitting in your parents' basement right now or in the house that you share with your bandmates, trying to figure out if $50 a day in Instagram ads is going to be enough to make you the next big superstar, I want you to take a second and think about all the numbers and all the data I just said to you and reevaluate that process, because I don't think there's anything wrong with paid promotion. But I do think we have to adjust our expectations. It's not a cure. So as we're thinking about all these things, I want you to keep in mind this great Ernest Hemingway quote. This is, never confuse movement with action. And I tell this to artists and I rephrase it as saying, never confuse engagement with fandom. So just because you post a funny tweet or a cool picture or a great video and a lot of people interact with it, that does not mean that they're your fans or that you've had a successful campaign. Eyeballs doesn't necessarily mean you've succeeded at what you're doing. It just means more people are looking at it. That is the very top of a sales funnel. You've gotten their attention. Now we have to convert them to paying customers. And that's why the owned lands and finding a balance between borrowed and owned lands matters so much, because it's most likely that people are going to discover your content somewhere else. As I tell people all the time, your fans are everywhere, and the paths to discovering you are countless. Maybe they see a funny tweet and that leads them to your Instagram, and that leads them to a music video on YouTube, and then they eventually end up on Spotify where they consume your album. Or maybe a friend tells them about you and they see you in concert. Maybe they just happen to find you through an algorithmic produced playlist. Whatever it happens to be, your fans are everywhere and you kind of have to be everywhere. But there's a trick to this. The solution is that artists must control the primary means of communication and utilize it without abandoning those borrowed lands. And the solution to this, in my mind, is instead of pushing everyone elsewhere, push them all inward toward your website. Let me give you a great example. Go to virtually any musician's website right now in 2022, and I'm guaranteeing that at the top or bottom of the page, you'll see a whole bunch of links to all their social networks. Now, the goal of these links is to get you to go follow the artist everywhere else so that you can keep up with what's happening in their lives and their careers, which I think is a beautiful idea. But as soon as you push fans off of your website, you're pushing them onto a borrowed land. And 9 times out of 10, the links that you're sharing on that borrowed land is pushing your fans even further away from your content. Let me give you an example. I find a new artist that I want to see if they're coming to my hometown. So I go to their website and sure enough, they are not coming to my hometown. But they do have a Twitter account. So I decide I'll go to Twitter and I'll follow them. So if they announce a tour, I'll be among the first people to hear about it. So I go to their Twitter account and they do not announce a tour, but they announce a new single, and that single is on Spotify. So I click a link in their Twitter account, which again is a borrowed land, and it takes me to Spotify, which is another borrowed land. So now I'm on Spotify. I like the song and I want to interact with the band. I want to tell them how I feel about it. Well, now I'm stuck on Spotify. I can either go back to Twitter and send them a tweet and hope that they do it, or click another social link from Spotify to like Facebook or Instagram or another account, which would take me to an even further out borrowed land. And all of a sudden I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sites removed from the artist's website. And every time I take a step away from the artist's website, their ability to control the narrative, control how I see their music, control how their music is presented, control how their branding looks, is reduced. You know, maybe they can have a completely customized Twitter profile, and that looks really good. But then if I move over to Spotify, every Spotify account looks exactly the same. And if I move over to Facebook or Instagram and you haven't updated it in a while, or you have the exact same content I saw on Twitter or something else, I'm just gonna get bored and then move on and forget about it. The better move is to use all of these social networks, this big diverse landscape of content that you have out there, the TikToks and the Instagram posts and the Snapchats and the tweets. Use all of it to push everybody back to your website. Because on your website, you control what happens. You control how it looks. You control what people see. You control the order in which they see it. You control the layout of the page. You control the copy that accompanies everything that they see. You can tell people what you want them to see, when you want them to see, how you want them to see it, and you can present it to them whenever they want at the click of a button. That's the power of your personal website. And you can take things even further by launching a fan club. You can do it yourself or use a party like Patreon. And I know Patreon is kind of a gray area when it comes to borrowed lands because it is a third-party service, but you get to control how things happen in your Patreon, but that is an option. Or you could start a newsletter, an email newsletter, where you just directly send your fans everything that they need. And let me tell you, that last option, not a bad one. Studies have shown that 99% of people check their email at least 3 times a day. And most people spend more than 30 minutes looking at their emails every single day. Now, I don't know what the numbers are for all the other social networks, but I can guarantee that 99% of people don't check any one social network every single day multiple times and actually engage in the content on it. They might scroll, but they're not reading messages and replying to messages and doing all the things that people often do in email. So again, don't leave your abandoned lands. It's not about leaving the abandoned lands. It's about finding a balance. It's about bringing all the people to a place you can control so that you can empower them to go out and spread the word for your music. Now, I talk to a lot of artists who have a hard time focusing on building their own website or building a fan club or starting a newsletter because they feel that the instant gratification of social media cannot be duplicated elsewhere. A great example of this is if you have a really strong following on any one platform, be it Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, you post a piece of content there, it can get thousands and thousands of likes in a matter of hours and really give you a sense that you've done something. Versus if you make a post on your website, you might not get a ton of comments right away. Or if you send out a newsletter, everyone will read it, but you might not get a whole bunch of replies. But you got to realize that, again, action doesn't mean growth. Just because a lot of people view your video doesn't mean they're going to buy concert tickets or that they even know where to buy the concert tickets. It just means that they saw your video. But if you send out a newsletter that announces your tour dates and has a link to the new video, well, then you're guaranteed to know that everybody saw every piece of information that you wanted to give them. If you have a new album coming out and instead of using a third-party merch store, you build a merch page into your website, well, then the landing page to pre-order your album could include your tour dates, it could include a music video, it could include links to pre-save the album on all the big streaming services. It could keep everybody on your website. And more importantly, you could use a pixel tracking code to grab all of their information when they're on your site and then retarget them when they leave. So if they don't complete the purchase, you'd still be able to push your music to them later on. And that is a better use of targeting than just throwing money into Facebook or throwing money into Instagram stories. That is a fine method that does work and has worked and will continue to work. But if you want to see real results and engage your actual existing fans while also empowering them to spread your message because they not only know what's happening, they have all the information they need to tell other people about it. That's why you need your owned lands. That's why websites matter. That's why newsletters matter. That's why fan clubs matter. That's why direct engagement with your audience matters. All the other stuff is good. It's all gravy. I hope you go viral. But unless you can harness the relationship with your fans and keep them feeling close to you, the rest doesn't matter. Now, I have many more thoughts on this that we will be getting into in the weeks ahead, but I wanted to come here and present this to you because, as I said, I showed it to a bunch of people in Nashville this week and we had a great conversation, and I hope that it helps you. Because marketing today is so much more complicated than it's ever been. And I honestly feel a little bad for musicians because you no longer get to just make music. You also have to be content creators. And not just any kind of content creators, but forward-thinking content creators who are doing cool things that people don't usually do and spending money that you don't usually have to do things that people wouldn't expect. And that's really demanding. But I promise you, that if you build owned lands in parallel with doing all of this stuff on all these platforms, you will eventually find yourself in a spot where you can just talk to your fans without having to do the big dance first. You'll have their attention, they'll want to hear from you, and you can have a conversation. And that's what I want for your career. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below or send me an email. My email is james@haulix.com. That's james@haulix.com. Who knows? Your next question could be the next topic I discuss here on Music Biz. And if you want to find us anywhere else online, you can watch us on YouTube and Spotify or listen to the show wherever else you get podcasts. We also have a written version of each episode that appears on haulixdaily.com. That's HAULIX daily.com. Now, I'm going to get out of here, but I'll be back very soon. So if you haven't done so already, please click the subscribe button. Music Biz exists to help you navigate the modern industry. That means understanding where we are, where we're going, and how we got here. That's what these videos cover, and that's what I want you to understand. So click that button if you haven't already. And if you have, thank you for your continuing support. I'll be back soon, but until then, take care of yourself, because you deserve it.